Now, a good workman or woman always has good tools as well. And we need to make sure, if we want to get the right finish, surface preparation obviously is very important. Now, we've covered that in quite great detail. The paint can only then do so much without having exactly the right brushes for the type of application. And it appears that a lot of the knowledge about the kind of brush that is needed for the best finish seems to have got lost with, you know, the deluge of not just plastic paints, but also all the brushes now are synthetic. Now, what we definitely always want for a good finish on linseed paint is natural bristle, and I'll talk you through a few of the different types of bristle and brush that you need for different stages and different applications. Now, if I start at the very beginning, now this is just a really cheap, actually horrible brush, but this does serve the purpose. So this is perfect for applying shellac, for instance. Shellac knotting primer. You don't need a really good brush for this. In fact, you really don't, because if you do forget to clean the brush with a shellac you've used for shellac, it will just go completely hard, ruin the brush. So definitely use something that you could throw away if you had to. However, that's the only time we're using a potentially throwaway or disposable brush. Now, next up is a brush which is made from hog's hair, and you'll find that pretty much all of the brushes I'm talking about here are made from hog's hair. Now, this, you can see a combination of the white and the black bristle, and this is very coarse. Now, this is actually a brush that we want to use for things like a tar oil or purely oil applications on rough timber, really rough surfaces, because the coarseness of this really gives you good opportunity to brush it into the surface. Now, then we get on to the actual really brushes that can help you get a really nice finish on windows, doors, you know, kind of finishes where people nowadays would expect a really smooth, perfect finish without brush strokes. There's a bit of a misconception that people think linseed paint can't get you will always see brush strokes. Now, very often that is down to a poor selection of brushes. So I'll talk you through this. Essentially, there are two groups. There's the application brush and then the laying off or the finishing brush. So for the application, I'll talk you through the main different ones. Now, I love using this like a sash brush, round with the bristle cut to a tip. Now, this really allows you to cut into the glazing bars really nicely. No need to use masking tape or anything like that. If you have a brush like this, make sure you don't put too much paint on and you follow just the line down really nicely. You can even, as you drag the line, just roll it slightly to get the paint out of the brush and onto the surface. I'm actually guilty of using this for more than just cutting in sashes and putty. I use it for a lot of surfaces. Now, linseed paint, as you know, goes very far, and you only need a tiny little bit of paint on your brush, which also you need to remember when you select a brush. So when you start stepping up to larger sizes of application brushes, that you don't actually pick a brush that is too big for the job. Now, so these two that we sell from Goldberg's, this is the 45 and the 55 mil. And this is really as big as I think we should go, certainly for any kind of surface that's like a wood trim, skirting boards, doors. This is more than sufficient. Now, and you can see just how densely packed that bristle is. There is no real room for anything other than the paint. And the reason why natural bristle works so well on for linseed oil is because the individual strands of hair have far more scaly character than you can get with a synthetic brush. And because the surface tension of linseed oil paint is so much lower than water, with a synthetic brush you can't get a nice finish. It just drags. So you do need a really high quality natural bristle to get a good finish. Now, so this again falls in the category of application brush. This is purely to, you know, put the cross sections on. You can already use it for the primer and the first coat to get obviously laying off the finish as well, to get a decent finish. Now, there are obviously different manufacturers of these kind of things. This is actually one from a Nesta pencil, a Gnesta. This is absolute Rolls Royce of brushes, and if you see just how it's cut, how it's packed, all completely handmade, seriously densely packed bristle. These need proper maintenance. I think they're worth the investment. They will stay with you for a lifetime. You can see the hole here, the eyelet in the handle. Once you clean them, you can hang them. They will stay with you for the rest of your life. All that will happen is that the bristle will just start to wear down and down and down, and it actually is works a bit like a fountain pen. You just get your own mark in the brush, so they will start to get better and better over time as you use them. Then another really interesting one, if you're painting decking, fencing, anything, you know, really large areas, you want to go bigger, but this is not for the faint-hearted. This fully loaded with linseed oil on a rough surface is hard work, but obviously they are out there. And one of the beautiful things about these is that because they're tied with string, as the bristle starts to wear down, you can just retie. So you undo to tie there, you take a couple of bands down, retie it, and you can start to wear the bristle down all the way very down to the very bottom here. So again, these will stay with you for a lifetime. But these are application brushes. Now, a really important thing that I should make people aware about is when people are looking for like a really nice smooth finish, laying off of the final coat is essential, and you need a specific brush for that. So we sell this ox hair brush, and I wish that I can convey this on camera, but this is so soft. Again, super densely packed, but this is almost like an artist brush. You could, or like a makeup brush or something. This is really smooth. Now, and the big advantage of this is, so you wouldn't use this for actual dunking in the paint and then applying it. This is when you've painted the final coat. After about 20 minutes, 30 minutes, when the paint has settled a bit, you would go over this in the full length, the full direction of the whole grain. And what this will help do is, because of the softness and the tightness of the bristle here, it lays off the paint beautifully, and you get a very smooth, even finish, just evening out all those last brush strokes. Now, these are all new brushes, and one of the many questions that we get asked is, how do you look after your brushes? So if I move these to the side for a second, you can see that I have, what we have here is selections of used brushes. Now, the right way to maintain your brush is, as I should say, is clean it out, clean it really well after you've used, and all you need is soap and water. So running water, lukewarm, and I would recommend, you can either use just our hand soap, that's absolutely fine. That will clean most brushes if you don't wait too long. If you have waited, one or 2 days and it's more stubborn, use some of the Brouns soap. that will clean most of your brushes as well. Or if you are actually working on a project and there is no reason to completely wash out your brushes at the end of the day, you can do what we do here. We don't actually have time to wash out our brushes, or there's no point because we need to paint something again, the next day. So I have different, just empty tins filled with just some raw linseed oil, and we just pour that into the tin, and then do per color group. So we have a color group of white. So I'll show you. I mean, this is see, the brushes just sit in the oil, and all we need to do is, so actually when I've finished painting something, you try and just wipe off on a separate piece of timber or cardboard or something. Get as much of the paint, brush as much of the paint out of the brush, then just dunk it in the raw linseed oil, and it makes sure that you always have enough oil in there to cover all of the, at least all of the bristle, but also the ferrule, and then up to the actual handle, because that way everything gets nourished. And one of the advantages of this as well is that the bristle will constantly be fed with linseed oil, and all you need to do then is when you're ready to paint again, is like I did here. You just bring out the brush, wipe off get as much of the excess oil off here. Again, wipe this off on a board, and then you're ready to go. This can go straight into the paint again. Make sure you don't mix up your paint color groups, because then you do need to actually wash them out. So I mean, here we've got a white, group of white, but then we've got these are actually some greens and greys, and you can see that it's slightly different, also works slightly different on the different color bristle. But what you can see, this is actually a very good example of where you can see how the bristle is actually shaping towards that side, towards my hand. So when I start using this, I get an even better, smoother finish. And you can see different examples again of more kinds of brushes. We have things like an angled brush. If you do, and this is a really big one. This is actually great for if you're doing sheds, fences, and you need to get into all those corners. So yeah, loads of different options. And yeah, I hope that's given you a good overview of the different selection of brush type and which brush you need to use for which particular paint and application.